Matt, it feels like only yesterday we sat down and started talking about the pre-season schedule, and yet here we are and those games are behind us and a new season is just a couple of days away now.
Yeah, so much planning goes into pre-season and it comes and goes pretty quickly. A busy 5 weeks, had a lot put into it physically first and foremost from the players. 9 games, a little bit of travel in there and a trip away, but generally we've been pleased with what we've seen in pre-season. So, you know, testament to the planning, certainly of Tom Short and the S&C staff and the medical group as well, because the lads certainly seem in a good position fitness-wise going into the first game of the season.
The intensity throughout pre-season has just gone up and up and up to other levels. What have you made of the team's progress as the weeks have gone on?
Well, it's been staggered with the opposition as well. So in terms of who we played early on in pre-season and also the minutes involved in the players on the pitch, and then that builds towards probably what we've seen in the last week or so of a better level of opposition and more minutes during game time for each and every one of our players. So I don't think anyone's been too short of game time. Obviously, missing Ruel from the first week was a bit of a blow, and then Chrissy probably half a week later from that. So almost your front line was wiped out from that point on. And generally, the signings have come at different stages throughout the window. So, you know, nothing's been perfect, but in terms of the way the group have gone about it, the mindset and intent of the players and the staff and the whole club, I think has been proper.
You mentioned the 9 games we played in pre-season there, 7 of which have had fans at them as well. 5 of those have been Rovers victories. How much stock is placed into wins at this point in pre-season, heading into the season?
Look, it's a game of football. It's competitive. You want to win anything in terms of competition. But in terms of pre-season, you can win every single game, and then it goes out the window first league game of the season. The league games are slightly different as well. I think we have to understand and remember that pre-season games are usually cleaner. I always use that phrase. Everyone's trying to play a different brand of football, a different style of football, as opposed to what we expect this weekend, which will be a little bit more helter-skelter, less control, more physicality to it, more travelling of the ball and travelling of both teams. So it'd be really interesting because generally we've fared quite well in the games we've played so far, but this weekend and moving forward will be a totally different test.
Is there a particular game or even a half that stands out for you in pre-season, Matt, in terms of that's what I want from my Bristol Rovers team?
No, not really. Like you say, we've built towards it from day one. The intent of this group has been different. We've worked them hard, like we spoke about Tom Short and the physicality within the group. They seem to be able to run, but more importantly, they're willing to run at the moment. The key for any manager is, can you keep your group in that mindset? I've got to pick a team for Saturday, so probably a dozen players will be slightly disappointed, if not more than that. Will they still be as willing to run come the Monday, come the Tuesday, pick another team for Cardiff? So, these are part and parcel of a football season. But in terms of what we've seen for the previous 5 weeks, I don't think there's been one player who's not shown the signs of the willingness, which is what we require. We want that to be a non-negotiable, a fundamental for this football club, and then we can build the skill layers on top of that. And then in terms of performances, obviously, unfortunately the fans didn't see it, but the first 60 minutes of the 120 minutes we played Swansea was an impressive game. Because they were a serious opposition, and we went a goal down after 1 minute, a dubious penalty, but then played really well in that first 60 minutes and won that first 60 minutes 2-1. The Portimonense game in the heat, you've always got to take that into account. And then obviously Plymouth, I suppose, the first time being back at the Mem, and the first time in front of our home fans, and the opposition made it a proper game, and the opposition fans made it a quite good atmosphere. And even Saturday, I thought that remained a proper game throughout. So like I say, we've tried to get the balance. You never master it in pre-season, but we certainly feel that each member of our squad and certainly the team have had their fill of what to expect in the future.
Now, when we sat down on the first day of pre-season, we had 7 new faces in. As we come into the first week of August, we're up to 12 now. How happy are you with where your squad's at in terms of incomings?
Look, delighted. Like I say, you want the 12 and everything you want to do first day of pre-season to get that 6-week clump into that group of players. That's never going to happen. It's unrealistic to expect that. So testament to George and his team to get 7 on day one. I know it took us a bit of time to get him through the door and actually announce them. And then working through pre-season, how many other players have joined us. There's still a little bit of business to do. We expect a couple of players to come in and maybe a couple of players to leave going the other way. So, there's always moving parts in relation to that. But we seem to have a motivated group and a happy group. And we want to keep it that way, but then add a few more positions to it and a few more qualities to it.
Before we look at the fixtures to come in the start of the league season, I want to ask you about a couple of other things that went on in pre-season. First off, you were at the club's open day last week and a chance to meet some fans and get involved in the festivities. How was that?
Oh, it was brilliant. I had a great time. Look, when you've got a young family and you get it in the neck when you get home in terms of not spending enough time with them, it's fantastic that you can combine a bit of family time with the work-life balance, I suppose. But I enjoyed it. I think the players conducted themselves really well. You know, it was a hot week and a hot day, but they were there for as many fans as they could possibly be available for. And just the atmosphere, I suppose. That's one thing which has struck me with the connection with this group of players to the fans. I think as long as the fans can see that effort and that all-in effort, they'll really appreciate it, and they might forgive some weaknesses that we'll clearly have in terms of on the pitch and individually as well. That's certainly what they want to see and expect to see. And like I said, we've got to make that non-negotiable for this football club. So there seems a good rapport at the moment. I think the fans are starting to get excited about what this team can turn into. We've always said, I'm sure the fans will understand, that it won't happen overnight. They need time. A lot of our players haven't played enough league football at the level we play in to be consistent on a regular basis. So there'll be some ups and downs, but as long as we keep the intent right and the youthful aspect on the pitch and the way the team are looking, a dynamic running team, is what we're aiming for. And the players we've brought in have certainly bought into that, and hopefully our fans can relate to that, because one fan mentioned to me on the Thursday, he said, you know, the Plymouth game was what they want to see from their team, if that makes sense. And look, that's a pre-season game regardless of the result, but just the way the players played. And like I say, I think that comes down to running first and foremost. And
just finally on pre-season, you were also there a couple of days before the Portugal trip for the Marcus Stewart Sports Tour walk in the aid of the Derby Rimmer Foundation. How poignant was that to be at the start of?
Oh, incredible. But we both support Marcus Stewart and the foundation as much as we possibly can, and we'll continue to do so. But to see the amount of people there in numbers, a little bit emotional for myself, seeing Stephen Darby there, a player who I played alongside at Bradford. So to see him firsthand, I've not seen him for a period of time. So yeah, it catches you in different ways. But the most inspirational thing was to see everyone there and everyone contributing, regardless of what sort of state they were in physically. They were willing to do the walk for the right reasons. And I think that speaks volumes for everyone at this football club. Go above and beyond for the right causes. That's what we're asking our players to do, and certainly the staff as well, and the culture around the football club. And if the fans can do the same, which they've certainly shown so far this season, then fantastic.
Now, looking ahead, we've got a busy first month of the season coming up. 6 games, 3 competitions. Let's start with the league games. Northampton Town at home to start with. A tough test to kick off the season. Yeah, look, they're all going to be tough. The added pressure of a league game, our bread and butter, so to speak. But you know, the expectation there. I want this group of players to play light and play free. I know 5 or 10 minutes into the game this weekend they'll feel slightly different, and there'll be a bit of nervousness and a bit of anxiety amongst them. They've got to run themselves through that moment. But yeah, a tough test. A strong team at the level, been promoted in recent years, similar to ourselves, and performed really well, admirably last season. So a manager I know relatively well, come across him enough times, so I know what sort of team he'll have. And where they'll be strong. So look, a game for us to look forward to. You want to start the season well, you want to get points on the board at the earliest opportunity, but we know this weekend will be a stern test. Coming off Northampton, it's then away games in the league against Rotherham, a team you know well, and Stockport County. Is it how hard or how easy is it to say what you can expect from an opposition team before the season begins?
Oh, it's difficult. It is difficult. I suppose the only one we've got a real good idea is Cardiff on the Tuesday night in the Carabao Cup, because we just played them and they taught us a real lesson in certain aspects of the game. So yeah, look, pre-season's disjointed in so many different ways. People are trying different shapes and playing to a different style as well, and we maybe have done the same as well. You try and pick up patterns and trends, but for the first 5 games of any season, you're a little bit blind. There's not as much knowledge there because there's no bank to go back to of previous fixtures and the personnel within that. But you know, these are just good games of football to be involved in. This is a fantastic league this season. It's such a strong league. We know what's come down from Championship and what's come up from League Two. It's just made it an incredible league to be in. So I want everyone to enjoy every minute. It's impossible, and then there's such a silly thing to say, but that's got to be our aim. And if we stick together for long enough, we'll be absolutely fine.
And you mentioned Cardiff there, a trip over the bridge to play them in the Cup, and Tottenham Hotspur under-21s at home in the Bristol Street Motors Trophy group stages as well. It's really shaping up to be quite an intense but enjoyable month of football.
Yeah, I mean, there'd be no excuse from a player's point of view. They'll all get game time. But yeah, just the quality of opposition. We saw how good Cardiff were at the weekend, and then we go to their place. Thankfully, not much distance involved, so not much travel time, and certainly for our fans to go across the water, and I'm sure we'll be well supported. It was a good atmosphere in a pre-season game, so imagine what it's like in a cup competition there. And then back to the league campaign, two incredibly strong teams away from home in Rotherham and Stockport, and in between that a Premier League outfit, albeit at 21's level, so a different type of game, and maybe that will be an opportunity for some of our players, not been on the fringe of it, but maybe some of the younger ones who've not gone out on loan as yet. I think our fans have got quite excited about some of our homegrown players they've seen it in recent weeks and throughout pre-season. So hopefully that might be a game we can aim out for some of those to get some game time.
When you look at those first 2-3 weeks of the season, Matt, and it is 3 game weeks with the cup competitions as well, how hard or difficult is that to manage from a player standpoint when you've still got players building up fitness and you've got young players looking for minutes as well?
It shouldn't be too difficult because generally fitness-wise and availability-wise, more importantly, we seem to be okay at the moment, and the amount of substitutes at the 5 in league games and maybe even more in cup competitions, you can manufacture moments and game time. But we're probably at least half a dozen players away from being fully fit, if that makes sense, due to signing late or due to injury or disjointed pre-season. You know, we mentioned about Chris and Ruel missing the majority of it. Yeah, we're probably about half a dozen who in the next 2 months we expect to fully get up to speed. Now in the next couple of weeks they'll get sporadic game time and limited game time, but we still expect them to affect the pitch. Right now the squad's strong availability-wise, but then in 6 games' time it might look totally different. It might be needs must, but like I say, I hope the group are as dynamic as they've shown and a little bit more resilient than previous.
Last couple for you. In terms of atmosphere, squad feel, I've said to you before, walking around the training ground at the moment, there's a really good feeling amongst the lads. They all seem really optimistic and confident. It's a feeling that's spreading to the fan base as well. Are you getting that feeling as we head into the new season?
Yeah, there's a natural aspect to that because we've signed a lot of new players, and if you're a new player to a football club, you kind of want to prove yourself, you kind of want to do well. There's a desperation to be successful and to show people why you've come to this football club. So there's a real hunger there. But even before the signings were made, whenever we did the references and the character bits and pieces, when we presented to them, we went big on the character aspect because we wanted the right people at this football club, and we wanted winners first and foremost. We wanted players who've got bandwidth and potential to improve, but also they're desperate to do well at a stage in their career where they want to progress for themselves and this football club. And then you get the right group with the majority thinking the right things. And there's a hunger aspect there which underlines what we want to achieve this season. But like I said, they need a bit of time. They're still going to be young and naive, and you probably saw that to some extent in the Cardiff game, especially against such a strong team. We'll have to be patient with them. I'll have to support them as best I possibly can and give them as much guidance as possible and look after certain players at certain times throughout the season. But we've also got maybe a core group of good characters, maybe a leadership group through the span of the team we can really rely on this season, who those younger ones, when they have their wobble, both during a game or for a period of time, can really lean on.